Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Uh, Viewers, today we'll be talking about this recent wave of terrorism and violence, in particular in the province of Balochistan. Now, if you remember, about a month ago, there was this attack on a patrolling vehicle of the Pakistan Army, in which one officer, along with 5 others, were martyred. And again, in Panjgore, now we've learned that there was attack. And this attack, in fact, ended up martyring 3 of our soldiers, and 5 others got injured as well, and a few of them are seriously hurt as well. Now, this particular trend, we do talk about the intelligence-based operations, which we technically call them intelligence-based combing operations. So whenever there is an information that a certain number of terrorists or the miscreants are hiding somewhere, then the formation takes place of a certain amount of soldiers according to the size of the operation, and then they go through and clean it. And just imagine the kind of risks those people are taking. In majority of the cases, we always end up hearing that 2 Jawans, 1 Havaldar, 1 Subedar and 1 officer. Normally the ratio of the officers versus the Jawan, that is one of the highest in Pakistan. Just imagine, that is one of the highest in Pakistan. But since this is a war on terror, again, we do know where is it coming from. Indians are backing these terrorists. Indians are backing these militias, for that matter. They are providing them with arms, with training, with money, equipment, you name it, and that's because India is not a country which not only sponsors terrorism. India is a state that is actually harboring and is practically trying to destabilize Pakistan. They always make sure that the Pakistanis should hurt. Whether you talk about the hard targets, or you talk about the soft targets, whether you talk about the religious places like the mosques or the churches, or you talk about the bazaars and the marketplaces. This is exactly what they do. They try to scare the Pakistanis. But we are a resilient nation. Nothing has happened so far, and nothing will happen. We will fight this menace of terrorism, which we've been able to do very wisely up till now. To talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Syed Muhammad Ali, who is a foreign affairs expert. Syed Muhammad Ali, thank you very much for taking out your time and being here with us. And we have with us Shehzad Chaudhry Saab, who's a senior security analyst also. So thank you very much, AVM Saab, for your time as well. And we'll be talking to Kamran Yusuf also, who's a senior journalist. But Shehzad Chaudhry Saab, I'll start from you, sir. This latest wave of violence, terrorism, in particular in Balochistan, sir, every other day we end up here that a certain military patrolling party came under fire by the enemies, and since they were hiding in the mountains, and they ended up killing so many people, maybe 1 officer, certain number of Jawans. I mean, this is something very practically has been happening now, and especially in Balochistan. Or we hear that the intelligence-based combing operation was taking place to clean a certain area, and a certain number of soldiers again were martyred. Now, sir, is it the intelligence-based operations, is their number increasing, sir? Is that the reason we are hearing about so many casualties? Or primarily you believe that the enemy is also being on the front foot at the moment, sir, because they target, they have the information, and they end up killing our soldiers, sir? AVM Saab.
Faisal, in my judgment, I think there are 2 different scenarios that we need to consider. One is for Balochistan. Balochistan has had quite a bit of an ingress by the BLA, BRA. They've always been there, but ever since the Pakistani armed forces began their operation, especially with respect to security provision for CPEC and all, and there was a heavier presence of the Pakistan military for the purposes of CPEC, and for, of course, before that, the cleaning operations against the terrorists. The BLA and the BRA, etc., they have created their camps outside Pakistani, or just next to the Pakistani borders on Afghanistan and borders in Iran, across in Iran and across in Afghanistan. Now that is where the BLA and the BRA and the rest of these Baloch groups are, or these insurgent groups from Balochistan are basically located. Now those are the ones that seem to be more active as far as Balochistan is concerned, and that is why you find that it's more of the IED attacks. You find that they understand and they know the routes that the patrolling parties will take. They know exactly where to hide and where to ambush our patrolling groups and parties. So you find that kind of those kind of attacks coming in. Now the reason, perhaps to link why now and why you find more of the BLA and the Baloch groups being so active now, perhaps is for the reason that the Taliban groups or the anti-Pakistan Taliban groups, say the TTP, anyway, they were not very active towards the Kandahar side, but some of those groups, for example, who have been active against Pakistan, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, as you know, joined up, proscribed in Pakistan, but joined up with the TTP in a certain way, and subsequently perhaps became a part of the uh, ISIS. So those have gone down a little bit. Those seemingly have either melted away or are under another transition or transformation or mutation because of the changing situation in Afghanistan. So that opens up the field, and that when that opens up the field, anyone who's been using the ISIS or the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi or the anti-Pakistan terror groups from the Afghan soil is now, of course, activating the Baloch groups against Pakistan. So that is where the Indian connection comes in. I think the situation on the in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where you see a lot of these in the former FATA agencies, is some of those remnant groups that have found an escape from Afghanistan or finding a way back into Pakistan. And these are mostly TTP linked groups which are now becoming active there, finding that the hiding comfort or hiding places possibly are now gradually reducing in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is getting more focused towards resolving their difficulties, even when there is a bit of a operations which go on between the Taliban and the Afghan forces. But I think they are finding themselves out of place in in the emerging Afghan scenario. And that is why they're trying to get back into Pakistan and finding place there. And that is where you see a more increased activity by these Taliban groups or the anti-Pakistan Taliban group, the TTP, for example, the remnants of the TTP, they are
Correct.
coming back now and creating difficulty for Pakistan in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area.
The very well defined AVM sir. Now, Ali, let me put this question to you, and that is regarding the China and Iran relationship. I mean, we heard that they have signed a strategic partnership. China is planning to invest something around $400 billion in Iran during the next 25 years or so. Maybe this money could go up. And there's a lot of development that is going to take place. Obviously, Pakistan has played a very important role in bringing these two countries that close. Number two, the minimizing role of India in Iran, the minimizing of the Indian role in Afghanistan also, is that actually bringing a lot of frustration within the ranks of the Indian raw agents who are trying to destabilize Pakistan?
Faisal, I think you practically took the word right out of my mouth. The first word I wanted to use is two words which explains and contextualizes the Indian behavior. I think the Indian strategic and political elite is suffering from a strategic desperation or a strategic frustration because of three reasons. Look at the developments in last 1 year. China, Kashmir, and Afghanistan. India has lost space on all these three major issues. Since last year, 5th August, India has earned more bad press around the world on Kashmir issue than ever before. China has humiliated them recently on line of actual control. And similarly, in Afghanistan, with the weakening of Kabul government and with the expected departure of US forces, India is feeling threatened that its investment in the non-state actors and other assets might become insecure. So these factors are making the Indian strategic leadership very insecure and very frustrated, and they are resorting to some desperate tactics, which will not be a substitute or compensate for the strategic debacle that they are facing. That is the overarching context. Now, if you look at the Indian behavior, I think India has traditionally, in the last 54 years, relied on non-state actors. I mean, we have not at the state level said this, but I can say this, that Basically, the support for Mukti Bahani was an active support for a non-state actor to break up a neighboring country. That is the ultimate historical evidence. And secondly, so they have used the non-state actors and terrorism as a foreign policy tool to destabilize neighboring countries. The third aspect is, in case of BJP government in particular, and Mr. Ajit Doval's doctrine specifically, you see a heavy reliance on terrorism as a foreign policy instrument because of three reasons. Number one, after Pulwama, their air force also, was forced to bite the dust. Their navy was also embarrassed because their submarine was detected. And in air and in land forces, they know very well that our forces are very alert and they provide proportionate and adequate response whenever they try something across the border. So there is no space for any conventional adventure. And in the presence of a credible nuclear deterrence, the space for any kinetic, conventional, direct attack is not there as part of Indian strategy. So hence, their primary reliance and resort is on terrorism through sleeper cells, through other outfits like Air Vice Marshal Saab pointed out. So that explains the Indian behavior. So we have to be guarded, but we must also assure our own nation that Pakistan has more experience, has paid more price, but also recovered as the most successful nation against terrorism in the last 19 years. No other country has gained so much successes against terrorism as Pakistan has. So, inshallah, with our national resolve, the
Yep.
unity of our country, we will definitely amicably and timely eradicate this challenge as well.
Now, Evim Saab, if you remember, sir, during the Musharraf's era, when you talk about Balochistan, there used to be this concept of A area, B area, and we also heard that the military would have certain number of cantonments inside the area. Now the problem seems to be in the southern part of the Balochistan, sir, and Balochistan, as we all know, is about 42-43% of the total Pakistan. Now it is very important. CPEC, I mean, we all know how important that is for Pakistan, not only for Pakistan, I think for the entire region, I would say. Sir, do we have any sort of a mechanism, I mean, where the security forces or more maybe cantonments should be made? Will that be a workable solution, or you believe the formula which Rahman Malik Saab during the time of the Pakistan People's Party, sir, that all those who are sitting in exile, they are our brothers and they should come back and we can negotiate and we can talk, and nothing happened on those lines either. So, or should we use both the formulas together, sir? How to cope up? I mean, this is a serious problem.
Look, the leadership of the Baloch groups is sitting in Switzerland and London, and they've been very clear about the fact that they will reach out to anybody who or which can provide support to them in any shape and form against the state of Pakistan. So these groups are anti-state. They're anti-state, anti-Pakistan groups. Now that's established because they've themselves declared that they are against the state of Pakistan. Anyone who tries to ameliorate or tries to give a cover or tries to find another facade for this kind of approach or attitude of these groups is actually cheating one's own self. So really we need to look at them as anti-Pakistan groups wherever they may be located. What do we do with such kind of an enemy? Because once when they declared or they take up arms against Pakistan, then Pakistan has the force, has the capacity, has the ability to, should be able to neutralize these groups. Now, obviously, we don't want to violate the borders of Iran and Afghanistan is a friendly nation, and we don't want to do that to them. But push comes to shove, I think that is something that, I mean, we really can't sit back and keep getting attacked by these groups when we know exactly where they're located, we know what to do with them, and we may not actually need to violate the borders of both Iran and Afghanistan while taking them on. So the military, in terms of military solutions, there are many options that are available. That is one. Secondly, of course, there are some passive measures. We must, like we announced, we have already announced that we must fence off the border with Iran as well, and that should be done. regardless. That's a very, very important thing to do. We have forces, and we must now be able to identify exactly as to where are we getting maximum number of casualties and in what areas. And if that be the case, we can, for some time, create pickets that can assure some sort of a garrison presence as far as Pakistani military is concerned in those areas. So militarily, operationally, the commanders have the resources, they have the means to identify what to do. And I think it's time now, as far as Balochistan is concerned and these groups are concerned, to be able to take all measures that are necessary to ensure the safety of integrity of Pakistan, the sovereignty of Pakistan, and the security of all our troops that are deployed doing their duties. That should be our primary concern.
Now, even have another point here. Whether you talk about the Reko Diq project or you talk about, let's suppose, oil and gas exploration, and there are so many other areas where a lot of investment has been done, a lot of work has been done as well. Now, sir, that is something which is very, very important. That is your, primarily that's your cash cow. Now, what I would like to know, sir, that people like Ramdad Bukti, Harbayar Mari, for that matter, Mehran Baloch, Dr. Allah Nazar, these are all the people we know. Some of them are in England, some of them were in Switzerland, and two of them have applied for the citizenship of India also. We all know who's funding them, who's going to get the benefit. But can't we have a very straight conversation with the people sitting there, or our foreign office can approach them as well, that these are declared terrorists. BLA has been declared a terrorist organization by the United States of America. Can't those countries do something about them?
Well, these countries can be approached and should be approached. After all, Iran continues to complain to Pakistan for groups which are anti-Iran or attack Iran from the Pakistani soil, allegedly, as far as the Iranians are concerned. So if Pakistan is expected to take care of them, I think we expect Iran as well to take care of them, and I'm sure they do. But like I said, it may not be possible for Iran to take care of so many threats which exist inside and around Iran. And so therefore, there may be a possibility or a situation where Pakistan needs to be more proactive about these bases from where these attacks take place on us. That is one. Secondly, look, as far as India is concerned, as far as any other agency is concerned that may be using these groups to harm Pakistan, to create a turmoil in Pakistan, whether it is for economic interest, whether it is for strategic interest, it is in our own interest that we secure and we safeguard our interests, as well as make sure that our territories and our people remain safe. So that's a responsibility for the Pakistani military, and I'm sure the Pakistani military will be doing all that is required and possible. Look, as far as the economic potential within Balochistan is concerned, well, that's been there for a long, long time. I think more importantly, what you see, like what Sayyid Muhammad Ali was mentioning, I think what we need to do is, we need to understand is the difficulties or the paradigm shift that has happened for India. India seems to be on the losing side on all ends. And when you see a state of desperation coming into Indian actions, so the Indians have lost Afghanistan, or they've lost the seat on the table in Afghanistan. They have lost Iran this week. They are having difficulty with China on Ladakh, and have ceded space in Ladakh, physical space in Ladakh, not only strategic space. So when you look at all this, so I think Ajit Doval and his kind can only find some sort of a redemption in still taking on Pakistan through these groups which are errant groups. So I think Pakistan should be careful. Pakistan must guard itself. Pakistan must make sure that, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, for these groups that are coming back or are being able to find space to come back into Pakistan, especially the erstwhile or the former TTP kind of groups and their remnant individuals, we must make sure that they are unable to come back to Pakistan and take the necessary action. And as far as the Balochis are concerned, or the Baloch groups are concerned, that's something what India is doing, and we must get Iran on board, we must get Afghanistan on board, and wherever required, take preemptive action to finish these groups off when they are located outside Pakistan, with their bases outside Pakistan.
All right. Sayyid Muhammad Ali, now I'll just read out two stories to you. Latest ones: 3 soldiers martyred in firing by terrorists in Balochistan, Panjgur. 8 others were injured. 5 of them are critical. Then there comes another story. 4 Pakistani soldiers martyred in intelligence-based operation in North Waziristan, ISPR says. And we understand young guys. Now, it is very difficult to even read such stories. It really hurts. But this is the way it has been for quite some time. There was peace. We have not heard much about any blast. The last attack, I think a brave Sindh police Jawans, they really did a brilliant job when these 4 terrorists again from BLM tried to attack. Now on one side, we hear that people are missing, and that's the hue and cry. That's exactly these 5-6 characters sitting abroad are talking about to the Western media and trying to malign Pakistan at every level, whether you talk about human rights or otherwise in Switzerland. And those who got killed, interestingly, these were all the characters who were the missing ones. So can't we properly make a proper dossier the way we have earlier made and presented to the United Nations and all the concerned institutions? In this particular case, I think we should stop counting the number now of our own soldiers, and we should come up with some sort of a political solution as well. Because military has one way of thinking: go after, eliminate, clear. But political engagement, I think it's really important.
Faisal, I think that's a very important point you raised. I'll take it from where Air Marshal Chaudhry Sahab mentioned. I think kinetic operation has its own significance, but is not substitute for diplomacy and for other outreach-related engagements. What Pakistan needs to do is use all its elements of national power. We must learn to behave as a confident, secure, and stable state. So that's why there are 3 things which we need to do simultaneously, and no single element of national power is a substitute for others. I think Ambassador Sadiq is doing an excellent job in Afghanistan, opening up, leading a soft power, an unprecedented soft power initiative in Afghanistan, making Pakistan acceptable not just to Kabul, but to the entire Afghani nation, offering them opportunities, businesses, cooperation, and also in that way it has a strategic achievement of reducing the misperceptions that India has attempted to sow in the last
I think Sadiq Saab has done a brilliant job. He's so close to Abdullah. He's very close to the president also.
Absolutely.
Plus he understands the dynamics of Afghanistan. Yes.
Absolutely. A very important point that for us to understand is from our success and gain in Afghan society is that our diplomacy and outreach should not be state-centric and it should not be government-centric. We need to be acceptable to the Afghan nation. So that's how the space for India and their non-state actors will reduce in that space. When they see cooperating with Pakistan, providing security to Pakistani assets, investments, and citizens, provides them opportunities, profit, and other things, then they will see that siding on the side of India is not good. But just very important point I want to add on Iran. We need to have a similar approach towards Iran. I think this unprecedented $400 billion investment news from China provides us the strategic space. We need to convince Beijing that attack on Balochistan is an attack on Chinese global and regional interests as well. So we need to encourage our diplomats to talk to the leadership in Beijing to tell the Iranians that reducing the space for Indian-sponsored non-state actor will translate into greater investment by China and greater regional collaboration, and the incentive for supporting non-state actors or even tolerating them on their territory will be harmful to Chinese investment in Iran, which is in Iranian own interest. So when they reduce the space for any non-state actor, which can or potentially be used against Pakistan, it is against the geopolitical dynamic which offers great opportunity for this whole region. That is something in which Pakistan, China, and Iran and Afghanistan should work together. And thankfully, our leadership is realizing that we need to talk to not just the Iranian military, but their not just their political leadership, but also their ideological leadership. That what is happening in Kashmir, if Iran sees itself as
Iran
a
has
leader of
supported
the Muslim
Pakistan on
world,
those
then it has
issues as
an
well.
ideological obligation towards the Muslims of Kashmir as well, towards the Muslim minorities in India as well. And they also have an ideological obligation not to allow those elements which are harming the interests and threatening the lives and property and honor of their fellow Muslims living in Pakistan.
All right. Now, we've also been joined in by Kamran Yusuf, senior anchor person, senior journalist. Kamran, assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for taking out the time and talking to PTV World.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Now, Kamran, since we are talking about this ongoing, I would say, a series of attacks on the Pakistani armed forces, in particular in Balochistan, and the guests, they have the idea that since the influence of the Indians, that has been decreased in even Iran, in Afghanistan. So these are the tactics they are primarily using to bring in people from BLA and conduct these cowardly attacks on the forces or on the stock market, for that matter, even on the Chinese consulate in Karachi, if you remember. So the time has come now, don't you think, that we should call a spade a spade? I mean, we are really keen to have great relationship with our neighbors also, but if their soil is being used against Pakistan, whether it's Afghanistan or it's Iran for that matter, one should be clear. The policy should be clear. Otherwise, whatever Pakistan has tried to do in the last couple of years regarding Pakistan-Iran relationship, they have improved a lot. But still, now this particular, I would say, huge investment, most likely they're going to sign this contract by the end of March next year, but $400 billion pouring into Iran means that the new alignments are forming. Kamran.
I think when you talk about the Iranian soil being used against Pakistan, I understand that Pakistan has been taking up this issue with the Iranian leadership, both at the military level as well as the political level. What we need to understand that when it comes to relationship between Iran and Pakistan, there are always many sensitivities are involved. So what I believe that instead of doing, public diplomacy, or should I say, using media to accuse each other, it is better for both these countries to have candid discussions. And I believe that they have already must have had candid discussions on these issues. They have different military mechanisms to sort out these issues. The latest development that you were talking about, that how Iran now dropped, India from this key project linked with Chabahar port. This is something very significant, and I see that eventually, Iran, Pakistan, as well as China will be on the same page. And if Iran realizes this, then I think that the task will become much easier for all these countries to sort out these elements which are creating trouble not only for Pakistan but as well as other regional players. So in that context, I think this is a very major development. As far as the role of India is concerned, I believe that after the attack on the Pakistan Stock Exchange, Prime Minister Imran Khan on the floor of the National Assembly did talk about the role of India. But my worry is that usually we just, deal such issues on day-to-day basis. We had that statement from the Prime Minister. Other officials also talked about it. And after that, it was quite silent. I think that we need to have a robust and proactive approach, continuously, taking up this issue that India is creating problem. Otherwise, I think just for few statements here and there, I think this is not going to solve our problem. I think we have to have a very elaborate diplomatic offensive against India. What I feel that after Pakistan Stock Exchange attack, Pakistan did, point fingers at India, but after that, it appears that we don't have any follow-up plan to take up this issue, not just at the international forums, but also taking up this issue with key international players, key Western countries, to tell them that, look, what India is doing in this part of the world.
Absolutely. Now, another important area, I was just having a word with our advisor to the Prime Minister on commerce, Razak Daud Saab. And he says that now we are also ready to renegotiate about the Afghan transit trade and the export from Pakistan to Afghanistan. I mean, a lot has been happening on that front, but this is the time Pakistan is so serious. It seems that, you know, when you talk about your regional countries, whether it's Iran or it's Afghanistan or the Central Asian states, we are taking a lot of decisions, very strong ones, for the long run also. But looking at the overall condition of India, do you think they're also panicking because they look at the relationship, the current one with India, with China, with Nepal, with Bhutan, even the river issue or the dam issue with Bangladesh for that matter? So it seems that even with the Sri Lankans, Pakistan always was an enemy state for them. But what I'm saying is that India is losing its ground in the region. So we should expect more frustration from them?
Yes, of course. I think, but it's not just that. I think we have to see this in a larger context. Why this realignment, I should say, taking place in this part of the world, and even Iran is now moving away from India. The reason is that there is a clear, strategic partnership between India and the United States and other Western countries. On the other hand, we have now looking at China taking the lead in this part of the region. We have China, Pakistan, Iran, Russia, and other, South Asian countries. So clearly, a new realignment is taking place. And for Pakistan, it is important that how we play our cards. The problem is that in the past we had such opportunities, but probably we couldn't take full advantage of those opportunities that were there because of our strategic location. So this time around, I believe that we have to play our cards very smartly, find that China is our strategic partner, but remember that international relations, every country first look after their own interests. So we have to be very careful that we should not become a sandwich between what is happening between China and the United States. It is important that we should side with China, but at the same time, we should make sure that our interests are protected at every cost. So what you are saying that India is panicking, it's not just India is panicking. I think the US is also panicking. They know that what China is doing, and every country is now taking their position. So Pakistan should also take a position while keeping their interests in mind.
I think interest is the most important part. Thank you very much, Kamran Yusuf, for your comments. Now, AVM Saab, talking about the regional alignments, it's very obvious that things are changing. Countries' interests, sometimes they merge, sometimes there's a difference of opinion. So it seems that the Chinese investment policy is something which is very attractive for countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Iran, these countries in the Central Asian side, for that matter. And then China is looking towards Africa. So the importance of countries like Pakistan and Iran, their geopolitical importance, their geostrategic importance, they're all very important. Do you believe that the Chinese investment and the way they are trying to now dominate the world as far as their I mean, it's a huge economy. COVID-19 was one issue which has damaged a lot of economic growth of so many countries. But it seems that the future is very, very, very clear. The abstract, it's readable now, isn't it, sir?
Faisal, our problem is, and while I agree mostly with what you have said, but we have a major problem in terms of how we assume or presume, the world, the world order as it currently exists. For example, we always look at it from the perspective of how the world was in the 1960s, post-World War II order is what actually dictates that is the only way perhaps that the world will exist. Now, that may not be the case. What you see here is that the United States is basically receding because of its own internal problems. You have a leadership in the United States that is not willing to move along and hold its position in the world as it has since the end of the Second World War. So you find a big gap there. When you look at Europe, for example, the Europeans are not going along with the Americans. They know the importance of China. They want to hold on to China. And you look at Germany, for example. Now, UK might UK might toe the line of the US for a little while. But let's see how does the Huawei 5G situation gets resolved in the United Kingdom. And you might find that the courts and the companies that are already indebted to the to Huawei 5G technology may actually go to the courts to try and safeguard their own positions. And you might have a more economic kind based decision on the Huawei 5G situation in UK. So I don't find that happening as quickly as it has been ordered by Boris Johnson. So the world really is in transition, no doubt about that. And you find that wherever the extra fat was, wherever the extra liquidity is, that liquidity begins to flow out. You found that the IMF has already accepted the Chinese currency as very much a part of the international currency baskets. That's an acceptable currency now. So when you look at all this, you find that it is not really China which is asserting itself. It is the US which has actually begun to recede its place and cede its own space to the other nation. Now China has played smart. China has done what it has actually tried to create through the establishment of the Silk Route, trying the One Belt, One Road phenomenon. So when you look at all that, you find that while China continues to slowly progress into that direction, it is not essentially dividing the world into two groups where we quickly say Russia, China, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, and everybody. These nations will be together, and we will have, we'll show the real strength to India and the United States. No, we might need India. We've just opened up a Wagah border to India. Just understand that we just opened up a Wagah border to India. So we're really not looking for a war or spoiling for a war with India. India has got its own troubles in Ladakh at this time. India has got its own troubles with a lot of neighbors at this time. So how the world actually settles down in the post-COVID situation, in the post-unipolar world situation, how the new order sort of settles down into a little more economic-driven things, and how does the world economy find its new roots and new sort of strength is what's going to determine how the world will align or sort of find relationships which will be, and you'll find that there are multinodal relationships. You may be siding with two nations. One nation has a sort of a conflictual relationship with that nation with which you are a friendly nation. So this is going to work in many ways. So let's not be quick in terms of defining alignments and finding comfort in how the global order was situated post World War II.
But at least you will believe that much, AVM Saab, that things are changing very rapidly, aren't they?
Well, things are changing because currently Iran is in a desperate situation, and they need to export their oil, and someone is going to buy their oil for them, and someone as impressive and as big as the United States. United States has actually told them, you will not sell your oil, but here comes another country and says, I'll buy your oil. So basically, it is one country meeting the needs of the other, and the other country saying, I'll invest $400 billion into your economy, and I'll try and buy your economy. So let's see for how long it works. Let's see how much does the international finance system support this kind of an arrangement.
But
So
at least
all
we have
this
learned
is
that
out
the
in the
Chinese, most likely China is the only country that is challenging the kind of, the behavior of the Americans. For example, whether you talk about South China Sea.
let me suggest to you, both have $1 trillion interest between them in terms of a mutual investment. If the Chinese have there is industry, American industry in China. The Chinese have investments in the United States of America, and it's more than $1 trillion worth on both sides. So really, I don't find that melting away as quickly as we assume. I don't think that's going to happen. They will find a way to settle down.
Obviously, because it's a different world now, sir. It's a different ball game. I mean, when you talk about economy, you talk about the interest. This is how it will be. A quick comment from you, Ali, regarding this very interesting phenomena. Now, when we talk about the resources and we talk about the growth of different countries, it is generally believed that the regions grow together. Individual countries, you don't find many examples where the one single country has grown and the regional countries have not. In this scenario, do you see post-COVID, hopefully inshallah soon, situation in Afghanistan will improve once the American forces they leave, or whatever happens, but things are improving at the grassroots level there as well? At the same time, let's suppose the Iranian, I mean, if there is another election, God knows who's going to win. Let's suppose Biden comes in. He wants to talk about the Kashmir issue. He also totally negates, he says, whatever has been done regarding Iran, there are problems. I mean, whatever Obama did, I think this gentleman just took a U-turn, Donald Trump. Let's assume for the moment things do change. Let's suppose Joe Biden comes in as the next president. I'm just saying, do you think things will keep on improving the way they are at the moment? Because this is the election year. I'm talking about another 5-6 months from now.
Okay, if you are talking about the short-term future, which is the remaining part of this year, I have a bad story to report. I think things will gradually, deteriorate further before recovering towards a more stable and clearer world order. Now, that's number one. Number two, a quick comment on what Air Vice Marshal Saab said. I think, and I endorse his view, the 21st century order will be different from 20th century world order. The behavior, the capabilities, and the policy options of states are different from 20th century. The statecraft is different. States, जिसको आप, as you call hybrid warfare in military domain, we call it in international politics, you employ all your elements of national power simultaneously. And it is not just state-centric. So in Afghanistan, we will see a slight deterioration in their internal security because of the imminent power vacuum which will emerge, and perhaps a change in the regime or the emergence of a new political system, not just the regime. So that process might be more turbulent. It is more likely. But at the same time, Pakistan is engaging Afghan nation and Afghani state and all its stakeholders simultaneously in a manner which is very prudent and astute. So we are engaging them economically, diplomatically, politically, and that is a very smart way to do. We should devise and evolve a similar approach towards Iran rather than off and on approach that, okay, we have a deficit of trust and you are supporting BLA. And then sometime we expect some military cooperation and we also offer them diplomatic support in Washington as well. So it should not be a black and white thing. A good lesson, like as Marshal Saab pointed out, is the emergence of strategic relationship between China and Iran. It is not just economic. There are the three more very critical dimensions. Let's not forget, in the Iran nuclear deal, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Russia and China supporting Iran against the US. They oppose the US departure. So Iran has secured diplomatic support in support of its nuclear program from China and Russia. So that is a very important part, despite our concerns towards towards Iranian nuclear program. Secondly, China also sees Iran as a defense market for its land, air, and sea forces as well. Third is they also want to explore and develop Iran as a big market. They have a large developing society, a middle class. And the fourth aspect is obviously, as you rightly pointed out, they are natural supplier and customer, because in next couple of decades, China will be the world's biggest energy market, and Iran can recover from and it will be the ultimate debacle for the US strategy.
I mean, I was calculating it comes to around $18 billion a year kind of a deal if they sign it in March, and $18 billion investment of the Chinese versus discounted oil. So that's great.
Faisal, I just want to add one point. You need to understand the dominant prong of US-Iran policy is economic strangulation. So if China provides Iran the breathing space that it will no longer be vulnerable to American economic strangulation by having direct access, uninfringed access.
But I'm sure the changing times, the changing scenarios,
will be the defeat of the US-Iran policy.
All right. Ali, since I'm totally running out of time, but anyway, thank you very much for your comments. Air Vice Marshal Shehzad Chaudhry Sahab, thank you very much for your participation as well, sir. And that's all we have for this, sir. I'll see you again, inshallah. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.